As manufacturers begin to roll out their EV product lines, we have seen brands approach this emerging market quite differently, where usually there's an unveiling for a flagship and then maybe a mid-tier car, and possibly we see a concept for a more affordable price range. But Mercedes-Benz is taking the EV market by storm and head-on in 2022. We have the EQS, EQS SUV, the EQE, which should be hitting showrooms sometime soon. And today I'm sitting next to the EQB, which is built on the same platform as the GLB. In today's video, I want to take a deep dive into this electric compact crossover, check out all the features that this vehicle comes with, and also see if you are looking at buying your first ever electric car, then maybe taking a look at a practical option that's also relatively affordable and I think rather fun might be a great decision. Now, before I get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Mercedes Benz of Burlington in Burlington, Massachusetts for allowing me to do this review. Their link will be in the description below so you can check out their extensive Mercedes Benz inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. 2022 has set the stage for Mercedes-Benz to begin fully electrifying their lineup, focusing most of their efforts on upmarket vehicles like the EQS and EQS SUV. But the EQB has brought some much needed flexibility and, more importantly, affordability that can entice Americans to make the switch from gas-powered cars. In a market that's rapidly growing, Mercedes is one of the first European manufacturers, alongside Audi, to offer a crossover of this size, whereas BMW has yet to produce an electrified X1 or X3 for the US. With consumers still reluctant to give up their gas-powered vehicles, the question is whether the EQB is the perfect fit for buyers that can change the perception surrounding EVs. Starting off with pricing, the Mercedes-Benz EQB 350 comes in at just over $58,000, falling right in line with the all-new Audi Q4 e-tron, Volvo XC40 Recharge, and now the Ford Mustang Mach-E. Where the EQB brings a unique value proposition is that it's currently the only EV from a legacy manufacturer in this segment that offers an optional third row to fit up to 7 passengers, thanks to the larger exterior dimensions. EVs in this market can be quite compact and not spacious enough for growing families, but the EQB outsizes almost every competitor except for that Mach-E, and that's likely why Mercedes-Benz decided to launch this crossover first over the smaller EQA. For those wondering about off-road capability, the EQB will have a ground clearance of around 7.8 inches, which is more than respectable and should be enough to take on some unplowed streets during the winter. As the alphanumeric badging demonstrates, and of course that outward appearance, the EQB is built on the same platform as the GLB. However, Mercedes added some really nice touches to the front and rear fascias of this crossover, where at first glance it's classier and modernized compared to the gas-powered model it's based on. With the lack of an internal combustion engine under the hood, having a functional front grille is unnecessary, but there are active side air curtains tucked away and barely visible unless you take a closer look. Instead of the square headlight housings that's found on the GLB, the LED daytime running lights flow into the illuminated light bar that sits just above the Mercedes-Benz emblem, and aesthetically speaking, this crossover is more visually appealing and free-flowing, where the EQB looks rather streamlined, but it also takes design elements from the rest of the EQ family. Moving over to the side profile, we have the optional 19-inch AMG 5-spoke wheels for an additional $600. But for EQBs with the AMG Night package, 18s will come standard. Despite sharing the same underpinnings as the GLB, Mercedes-Benz reworked the suspension to handle the weight of the battery and electric motors, and as a result, ride quality has been improved, resembling more expensive offerings within the lineup. You'll have power folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, following the same design path as up front, but also the flagship EQS. The taillights will run the length of the rear fascia, making the EQB look more complete than the current GLB. Of course, there won't be exhaust outlets, but the reshaping of the bumper does give this crossover a bit more of a rugged appearance, as the plastic cladding does catch your eye from this angle. Considering the boxier body lines, Mercedes-Benz really got creative, as it looks like a traditional compact crossover, but one that's sportier and more up-to-date to be an appealing alternative to the Audi Q4. When it comes to performance, the EQB 350 is powered by dual electric motors to produce 288 horsepower and 384 pound-feet of torque, and you'll also have a range of 230 miles on a full charge. Because EVs get such great performance thanks to instant torque, the EQB is capable of going from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds flat, which, to put that into perspective, will only be about 9/10 of a second slower than the GLB 35 AMG. And as we'll discover later on in this review, this EV handles very much like a performance crossover. For a vehicle such as the EQB, this straight-line speed is more than enough for consumers in need of a practical daily driver that's fun but also family-friendly. Our model does come standard with Mercedes-Benz's 4MATIC all-wheel drive system to help you take on winter road conditions. Stepping inside, this EQB is equipped with the $2,800 AMG Night Package, giving us the MB Tech Sport seats with Dynamica inserts, which do provide a lot of support and bolstering. Both the driver and passenger side are manually adjustable and heated, but it should be worth mentioning that 12-way power adjustability is available with 3-position memory, and they can be ventilated as well. Continuing on with the sporty theme for this crossover, in front of you will be the AMG line sport steering wheel wrapped in Nappa leather to keep you fully engaged on weekday commutes, but also supplements the smooth handling and cornering ability that Mercedes-Benz is best known for. With the EQB being very closely related to the GLB, you'll immediately notice the similarities to the gas-powered model, as the full digital gauge cluster and user interface should be familiar if you've owned a Mercedes-Benz in the past. By using the touchpad and buttons mounted on the left side of the steering wheel, you can customize this display to your liking and access the different menus that are embedded on this screen, including the driver assistance features, navigation, and radio. Then moving over to the infotainment system, you'll have a 10.2-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation and augmented reality that activates when plugging in a destination you want to travel to. As with most new Mercedes-Benz products, you'll have an onboard assistant that immediately responds to basic voice commands, where you can adjust the climate control or turn on the heated seats without needing to press a button. One key difference from the GLB is the dedicated menu that shows you where there's nearby charging stations, but also the energy consumption and remaining battery life, so you can better plan your trips. If you prefer to not reach for the screen, there will be a touchpad and quick access buttons to get you to different menus, which can be found on the center console. And you'll also have the ability to use the touchpad on the right side of the steering wheel if you so desire. To help set the mood, the EQB does have ambient lighting that glows quite bright even during the day. As for the rest of the user interface, we could have navigated the different menus for 30 minutes, as this head unit is very in-depth, offering a wide range of features. Finally, you'll have a rear backup camera with trajectory to go along with front and rear parking sensors. Then as we work our way down towards the center console, there will be a row of buttons for the dual zone climate control and front and rear defrosters, and beneath that, there will be a cubby for loose change or a smartphone, and it's here where a USB-C and 12-volt outlet can be found. For the center storage compartment, you'll have more than enough room for smaller items. And rounding out the front seating area, above, we have the optional panorama roof that lets in an abundant amount of light into the cabin. Now moving on to the second row, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And this seat has been adjusted all the way back for demonstrational purposes. It's also somewhat on a recline. And I have a few inches of legroom to work with here. Now, I'm not the tallest person out there. I'm around 5'5", and most likely, if you are an average size adult, you won't be sitting back here, especially behind someone around the height of 6 feet tall and above. But for families, I think you could definitely have your kids back here and they'll be able to sit comfortably. Also, if you do have average size adults, when it comes to the headroom, there's more than enough of it, especially since we do have a higher roofline on this model compared to a GLA. And then I think that for someone around the height of 5'8" or 5'9", they don't need to worry about hitting their head on the headliner. And shoulder room, I like it. I do feel as though this vehicle is wide enough where you can't fit a third person, which I will demonstrate. Now moving on to the center seat. The center hump isn't really that aggressive at all, which is why I do think you can't fit a third person back here, not only on a shorter drive, but also on a longer road trip. And I think that's where the GLB and the EQB is definitely going to show its value and worth, and why I would recommend going with one of those two vehicles over the GLA or EQA whenever that arrives here in the US. Because when it comes to shoulder room, it's really not that bad, and you have plenty of legroom, which I'm really glad to see. Because for a lot of crossovers in this market and price range, even for the EV segment, you're just not going to be able to fit that third person back here. So I like that. I really like to see that. And then moving on to the driver's side, I just seat to someone of my height, around 5'5", and I have plenty of legroom here. So as a family crossover, when it comes to the practicality, the interior spacing, I think this is really where the EQB is a great option in its market. Also back here, you do have two rear air vents to go along with two USB-C inputs. You also have a 115-volt two-pronged outlet. And rounding out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with two cup holders. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive a power liftgate, and by pressing down on the Mercedes Benz emblem, the liftgate will open automatically. And inside, behind the second row seats, you're looking at right around 23.7 cubic feet of room to work with, which will be very much on par with the Q4 and is more practical than other EVs in this segment and price range. I was able to fit all my camera gear today and then some on top of the box that's already back here. So I think that if you are going on a road trip with the family, you could fit 5 to 6 bags of luggage back here, no problem. Also, if you are going to the grocery store, you can fit all your groceries and do other errands as well, which is one of the reasons why I think the EQB is a great daily driver. Then with the second row seats full, you're looking at right around 62 cubic feet, which will outclass that Q4. And that right there is why I think the EQB is a great all-around EV that shows its practicality and its interior spacing, and that's where I think it has a lot of value and worth to many consumers in this price range. But one thing to note about the second row seats, they fold in a 40-20-40 split manner. So if you have maybe longer items, maybe even a ski or snowboard, you can slide that right in there, no problem. Then on either side of the rear cargo area, you will notice some netting and some smaller cubbies for maybe a couple water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. And finally, one feature that I really like is the rear cargo cover, which will keep all your valuable items out of sight. So if you are like me and you have camera gear or anything else of value that is irreplaceable, you can leave them back here and have that peace of mind knowing that no one will be able to peek in and steal what you have. And then once you're done, just press the button and the liftgate will close automatically. So we are now behind the wheel of the Mercedes Benz EQB, and I'm really intrigued to see how this vehicle compares to the GLB. Manufacturers have two different avenues to approach the EV market. One is to build their vehicles on a dedicated EV platform. The other is probably a more cost-effective option where they can mass produce EVs, which is to just drop in a couple electric motors on a gas-powered chassis. And now you have a vehicle that is affordable, but also a vehicle that now is an alternative to using fossil fuels. And one thing I will say is that using gas-powered chassis come with its own set of pros and cons. The biggest con will be that brands can't drop in a bigger battery. So as a result, range is certainly going to suffer. And the EQB is no different to that. You are going to have a range of around 230 miles, which, isn't the best in the EV world, but for a lot of buyers looking for a daily driver where they can just commute to work here and there, maybe not go on longer road trips and just go to the grocery store and run errands, I think the EQB is certainly more than sufficient. But the pros certainly outweigh the cons. And when it comes to the instant torque, the performance, the linear power band, you have a crossover that feels very much like the GLB 35 AMG. And that right there is why consumers have become very receptive to EVs, because they're more engaging, they're more enjoyable, but also they feel more refined than the gas-powered models they're based on. Because you have the weight of the electric motors and also the battery placement, the EQB is going to have a lower center of gravity. You're going to have better handling characteristics. You're going to have a stiffer suspension feel, while at the same time having a vehicle that feels very luxurious and upscale, more so than that gas-powered model it's related to. One of the reasons why I do prefer the EQB over the GLB from a daily driving aspect is because it doesn't have the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that is paired with a 9-speed automatic transmission. Personally, that isn't my favorite transmission from Mercedes-Benz, even though I did love the 9-speed that was found in the C-Class, but that was paired with a mild hybrid system, so gear shifts were certainly going to be more smooth and more enjoyable, whereas the GLA and GLB are certainly going to feel a bit more on the cheaper side in the Mercedes-Benz lineup. But since we do have dual electric motors, the performance is very smooth and linear. Also, it's instant when you do put your foot down on the accelerator. And to me, this is where I find electrified versions of gas-powered cars that I reviewed on the channel to be far superior, and I think a better buy, especially if you don't drive long distances throughout the week. Now, since we are going to be going on the highway, very briefly, I am going to put the EQB in sport mode to see how this crossover performs getting on the highway. A little bit of body roll there, but amazing acceleration. You're going to notice that with the GLB, it's a bit on the lagging side when it comes to that performance, especially in sport mode. I do not like using the GLA and GLB in sport mode, but with the EQB, it's a whole different experience. What I do love, though, is that with the road noise, there's not a lot of it entering the cabin of this crossover. So it's very quiet in here, even though the EQB is not the most aerodynamic in its segment, but I find it to be very upscale for its price point. Definitely fits the $60,000 price tag. Now, unfortunately, we do have a slower driver in front of us, so I can't really test out the handling capabilities on this exit, but it does feel very planted, which was something I didn't expect, but also didn't experience with that GLB. Let's get on the highway one more time. It handles like a sports car. I mean, you are going to feel some of the body roll. You're going to feel some of the limitations that this crossover is going to give you, just because it's not the most aerodynamic or sporty. But as an enthusiast, this is where I find EVs to have their appeal, especially ones that are built on gas-powered platforms. A regular GLB would not be able to handle like that, and I wouldn't have the confidence to get on the highway as quickly as I did. Nice brake feel as well, very smooth. Also, what I noticed too is that you are going to feel some of that regen braking, but it's not very aggressive at all. It's not going to feel as though that it impedes on your driving experience, but also it's very easy to get adapted to, where some EVs that are out there, that regen braking is going to be extremely aggressive, so where you could actually do one pedal drive. I personally don't like that coming from a gas-powered car. I'd rather ease my way into that regen braking, and that's what the EQB is certainly going to give you. What I have noticed with sport mode is that steering does tighten up a bit, but in true Mercedes-Benz fashion, it is still light and smooth. So you're not going to get a lot of feedback in the corners, but very direct handling and steering. Oh, there's so much confidence getting on the highway with this crossover that I didn't have with that GLB. Another pro with going with the EQB is that all around it feels very conventional, whether it's the exterior or the interior. If you have owned an older GLA or C-Class in the past and you're ready to make that switch into your first ever electric car, you can feel right at home when you do get behind the wheel, where you have the conjoined screens with the full digital gauge cluster and the infotainment system. Also, same dashboard layout, same center console, and also to a similar degree, you have the same packages. So it's not going to be a foreign experience to you. Whereas I think buyers who may be looking at that Q4, it's going to be a whole different world, a whole different experience. And maybe buyers who have purchased a Q3 or a Q5 may not find the Q4 to be all that appealing or that enticing. Whereas an EQB, it feels like a GLB, it feels like a GLA, and buyers can easily make that switch with confidence. But also with vehicles that are built on a dedicated EV platform, they are going to have new technology that for some buyers might find very intimidating, whereas this is what you have experienced for the past maybe 5 to 7 years. Now, when it comes to overall vision with the GLB, looking out straight ahead of us, nice panoramic view. A-pillars are very thin, so you don't really have a lot of blind spots to work with up front. Also, looking straight out in front of you, the hood doesn't stick out that far, so you can see everything that is immediately in front of you. Then, looking at the side mirrors, they are placed in a good spot. Also, they're decently sized, so I can see what is in my blind spots. And looking out back, even though the headrests are in the way, I can see what's directly behind me. So really you have a lot of vision to work with here in this vehicle, of course, with the EQB being very boxy. Also, when it comes to shoulder room, plenty of it. You don't really feel very cramped or claustrophobic in this crossover, and that's why I did like the GLB over the GLA. It doesn't feel as cramped or as compact as that GLA. But overall, I think what the EQB is offering here is a vehicle that is very family friendly, but also daily drivable, where it is very comfortable. The suspension is certainly more than forgiving, but also it's a vehicle that you can do your daily tasks. You can run errands. You can also commute to work. I think that 230 miles of range is more than enough for most Americans. Now, some people will say, oh, I'd like to see maybe 300 or 350, but I think that there's a decent percentage of Americans who are just looking for an electric vehicle that they can go into town, go to the stores, maybe go to a couple cities over to see their grandchild's soccer game, or even have a vehicle that they can load up the family and maybe go to relatives on the holidays. I think that's what the EQB is certainly going to give buyers, and that's why I feel the EQB is certainly going to fill that void that some people who are ready to make that switch have been looking for. So in closing, is the Mercedes Benz EQB a crossover you must experience for yourself, test drive, and possibly buy? When you take a look at the closest competitors, such as the Volvo XC40 Recharge, Audi Q4, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, thanks to the price increases for the 2023 model, and also the Volkswagen ID.4, what you are going to notice is that the Mercedes Benz EQB will be very similar when it comes to the fundamentals as that Volvo XC40 Recharge, because it is built on a gas-powered platform. And because of that, it's not going to have the same range as vehicles built on a dedicated EV chassis. But if you're somebody that's not focused on going on longer road trips, you just want a vehicle that you can commute to work with and also maybe drop your kids off at soccer practice and do some weekly errands, then the EQB is equipped to do that and handle that, where you have tons of practicality and cargo space, but also there's a lot of room for that second row, which we really don't see a lot right now in the compact EV market. Then when you get behind the wheel, very conventional interior that I feel that some Mercedes-Benz buyers who maybe own a GLA, GLB, or an older C-Class are definitely going to love and feel very accustomed to. There's no confusion whatsoever, and it is a very spacious interior where you don't feel very claustrophobic for a crossover of this size. Then getting back to the driving experience, I love what the weight of the battery and the electric motors does to this vehicle, where it handles and corners far better than the GLB, unless you want to go with the GLB 35 AMG, which would be my pick in the gas-powered lineup for the GLB. But also you had that straight line speed around 6 seconds, which is very much on par with the Audi Q4 e-tron. And all in all, I think as an EV, as a daily driver, as a family hauler, it is equipped to handle all the tasks and demands you have for a vehicle in this price range and segment. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.